Welcome back to the Midlife Maverick podcast. In today's society, men are struggling with outdated scripts of what it means to be a man. In this episode, we're talking about a different path. I'm joined by Jason Lange, men's embodiment coach, facilitator, and certified No More Mr. Nice Guy coach, to explore men's groups, shadow work, and how presence changes everything. We dig into Jason's personal story from loneliness and shame to brotherhood and leadership. And we unpack practical tools you can use today to feel more grounded, connected, and in control of your life. I really enjoyed this time with Jason. He's an incredible man who has an incredible presence, and his story is something that I feel we all need to hear more of. Before we dive in, I want to invite you to join the free Midlife Maverick School community, a space for men in midlife to connect, share wins, and get support. You'll find the link in the show notes. Jason, welcome to the Midlife Mavericks podcast.
Yeah, I'm so pumped to be here. Thank you for having me.
Mate, I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's something that I've been thinking about for a while, and we're going to dive deep and talk about men's groups today. And I'm thinking about starting one of these myself. So connecting with someone that's had some experience in this space and talking to you about your journey will hopefully give me some insight, but also I feel that it'll give a lot of my listeners a really good insight into men's groups. But before we dive into that, a couple of questions I always like to start the podcast with.
Sure.
Number one, if you and I were to be jumping on an airplane, where would that airplane be going? Do you have a favorite holiday destination or a bucket list item that you would love to tick off?
I have really been craving going to Japan. I've never been there and had some friends go last fall, and I'm like, I would dig that. So that's very high on my list coming up sometime in the next couple of years.
Beautiful, mate. What is it about Japan that sparks your attention?
I just hear there's very kind people, and I'm from the States here, and we have a lot of natural beauty. But one thing our culture doesn't really value, let's just say, is beauty. And so one thing I see in just from afar in Japanese culture is an appreciation for making things beautiful just for the sake of them being beautiful because it's worth it. And the way they tend to, work intention into beauty in terms of gardening and how they design their villages and homes, it just feels like a very cool interweaving versus, I grew up in strip malls and suburbia, and like everything is just functionally ugly and there's no effort to make it beautiful.
Wow, that's an awesome insight, mate. I've been to Japan a few times, mainly for the snow, but I've also checked out Tokyo and I've also checked out other parts as well. And it is a beautiful culture and beautiful people, like you say, and it is an incredible place in terms of their little villages and their little communities and all the stuff that goes on. So yeah, I can definitely come to Japan with you again. I'll be happy to do that.
Great.
So if we're sitting on this airplane and we've sparked up a conversation and I'm asking you, what's your mission in life right now? What would you say?
Yeah, very simple, very in line with our talk today. Every man should be in a men's group. So my mission in life is just to get every man into a men's group because of the support and brotherhood and opportunities they provide. And frankly, in a world that's kind of gone mad, I think it's one of the highest places of leverage in that kind of what I've seen playing out in the work I do. And frankly, in my own journey is healthy men create healthy relationships, which then many of whom go on to create healthy families, which create healthy kids. And a lot of guys I work with and a lot of my life, turns out we end up spending decades trying to unwind some of the wounding we experience in maybe the first 5 years of our lives. And so this thing of, shit, what if not every man or person had to spend all that time on that wounding? What would it be like to just come into life ready to rock and grow from there? So that's a big part of my mission, and I'm quite passionate about it.
I can tell by the way you talk, mate, and it's a beautiful mission to have, and I agree with you on a lot of what you're sort of saying there. I'm curious, you mentioned the journey there, and you mentioned probably a little bit of struggle. I think a lot of men keep pushing and striving and working hard, and they don't take action until something breaks, until their health collapses, until their relationships collapse, until something starts to go wrong and it's reactive instead of proactive. So I'd like to rewind a little bit to hear more about your story. Where did it start for you before all this men's work? What was going on in your
Yeah,
life?
totally. Well, I think that's a very astute observation. And oftentimes it does require some kind of threshold of pain for people to want to make a change. And yeah, my story is right. We were talking a little bit before we hopped on here. I grew up outside of Chicago in the US and kind of the American suburban dream. I was lower middle class. I grew up in the 80s. Basically had all my security needs met on like a functional level, but my family had no capacity for interiority, just no emotional skill, communication. And as I learned as I really got older, like no physical connection, just touch was not part of my household. And, as is the story, I think, for a lot of people, when that's your just what you were raised in, you don't know any different. And then, I became a teenager. I kind of started getting out of the house, spending time around other families and realizing, oh, hey, there's something different here. And even seeing how I showed up in the world started to feel different. And it really came to a head right when I hit puberty. And I'm heterosexual. So in my case, I was interested in girls. And my whole body get very tense. I would get clammy, I'd get sweaty, I'd get really uncomfortable, and my mind would go into just hyper rumination. And when women got close to me, I would actually get like anxious in my body. And I just had no idea how to connect with women, even though I really wanted to. So that happened. And then I did get lucky in that I kind of met some nerds in, high school, some guys I really got along with. Um, One of my first brotherhoods in a sense. But even with them, I noticed they would kind of wrestle, horseplay, be physical with each other. And it just was not in my default way of being at all. And as I progressed, as I got older, the pain of not being in relationship became more and more and more. And for me, I self-regulated primarily through food, video games, and porn and masturbation, and kind of got me through very lonely times in my life. And I saw my friends going on, having relationships, kind of growing up, having the experiences I was wanting to have. And I just didn't get it. I had this sense, okay, something is different. I'm in a lot of pain and I need help. And that kind of kicked off my journey of there's got to be a better way to be in my body, in the world than this. And I had no idea what I was doing. So initially, I think like a lot of men actually, because, this was even before podcasts, I got into philosophy. And I was just trying to read and understand the mind and the body. And that got me so far, but one of the things it did is it got me to move across the country and kind of get into a little scene. And it was there that I discovered men's work, men's groups, and somatic therapy, which is also equally part of my journey. And in my mid 20s, started to finally have some breakthroughs, unwinding and realizing what, in a lot of ways, real neglect I experienced as a kid, how that impacted my nervous system, and what the legacy of that was as I moved through the world. And as I got into the root of that and did some really deep somatic and shadow work, which I love leading now for guys, it cracked some things open in me that I was like, okay, what was that? I thought I knew what was going on here, but what just happened? And then I kind of just fell in love and got into, simultaneously got into a men's group. And then the rest is kind of just history.
Awesome, man. Thank you for being honest and also being a little bit vulnerable there. I think a lot of guys might be reluctant to sort of be able to stand up and say, some of the stuff that you've just said, but being able to, reflect on that, see the point in your life where maybe you were feeling a bit stuck, and to see the changes that you made, that takes courage and bravery, buddy. So thank you very much for sort of sharing that. I think a lot of young men these days could probably relate strongly, and even men in their midlife these days could relate strongly to maybe that childhood you had and the
Hmm.
loneliness that you felt. What was the turning point? Was there something that sparked this hunger to look into philosophy or to, I don't know, move and start exploring the world a bit more to make connections? Like, was there a point in life where you can just go, well, that was it? Or was it just, that's what
Yeah, I
happened?
mean, it was a combination of, just not feeling good. I mean, like,
Mm,
a kind of depression that followed me day to day, and as I got older, a deepening and deepening shame, which I work with a lot of men around these days, that I was a virgin, right? I was a virgin until till I was 26, and even though I had male friends, I didn't tell them about it. I carried it in such deep shame, like there was something really wrong with me and that, no one would understand. And that just, kind of got to a place where I was like, okay, this is fucking ridiculous. In one sense, it's like, why is this so hard for me? And I really want to find out like what that is in my nervous system and in my body. And as I started doing, um, some men's work and somatic therapy, things started to become clear in terms of mapping out moments in my life. But it was really that. It was honestly a desperation to feel some physical and emotional connection with a woman in my case. And frankly, it's one of the reasons it's one of the main types of work I do with men around relationships now. Because to be totally frank, it's one of the only things I have found that'll get a man's ass off the couch when he can't get the relationships he wants, or he's in the one he wants and it's about to go away because he can't keep it alive and he doesn't understand. And the truth is, as men particularly, we are woefully underprepared for what's required in a modern relationship now. And we are just not given the training as boys and teenagers and frankly into men of what it takes to be emotionally available and grounded and present and how to communicate and all these things I had to eventually kind of stumble through very painful lessons of learning and then thankfully get a lot of guidance from wiser men than I along the way.
yeah, wicked. A couple of questions pop to mind, and I'm going to give you both of these, and you can choose how you want to answer these two questions. One is off the back of what you've just sort of said that young boys aren't given these skills. So my question around is that was why are we not given those skills and what's missing? And the other part is, we've mentioned men's work, so I'd like to better zoom out a little bit and sort of query, well, what is men's work?
Sure, yeah, I'll do the first one as a bit of context, then we can kind of flow into the second one.
Mm,
And so, one of the challenges these days is that um, there is difference between male and female bodies, right? Just hormonally, how we move, doesn't mean there's not room for a whole range of people and expressions in between. But, some of this goes into the work of Robert Bly, who wrote Iron John, which was kind of one of the first big mythopoetic men's work books in the 90s, right? And one thing he tracked was just for some historical context, right? Back in the day, what would happen is as young boys, we would often spend a lot of time from like, 0 to 8 or 9 with the women of the village, the aunties. We would just kind of be raised. It was all together. And in most indigenous cultures and tribal cultures, there's plenty of record for. And then at some point, just a little bit before puberty, the boys would be taken away by the men and they would be initiated into so-called manhood. And, there's all ways you can do that in different cultures and that can mean different things. But that was where boys started spending time around men and learning how they could be of service in their community, in their tribe, in their family, etc. Now, one of the huge shifts that happened was the Industrial Revolution hit, right? And so what happened was fathers who used to work locally in the trade, right, of whatever kind or whatever it is, started going off to factories and they'd be gone all day. And so dad's gone all day. And then the modern school system is kind of born and everybody's just channeled into schools.
mm,
And it's changing, thankfully, but a lot of teachers are women, right? Because it takes a lot of relational capacity. If you've ever been in a room with 30 little kids, it is not easy, right? You got to have a lot of space and be very attuned. And we can certainly learn to do that as men, but Historically, women have gravitated to that a little bit more. But so this thing started to happen where boys weren't spending time with men anymore. They were being more and more raised by women. And just the kind of industrial nature of our schooling system, which frankly, there's plenty of research, was to prepare people to get factory jobs. Sit still, do this thing, keep focused. And even that phrase, sit still, sit in class, sit still. There's all the research in the world right now that is actually incredibly challenging for a young male body. Boys are meant to move and learn and break things and be kinesthetic, right? I saw one research thing basically that said all the gaps between kind of boys and girls right now can basically be erased by two things. One, hold boys back a year because we mature emotionally slower than women, and start the day with 2 hours of vigorous activity. 2 hours of vigorous physical activity, and boys drop right in, and we can sit and we can be focused. But our whole school system, particularly these days, is just not set up for that. And so there's this sit still thing. And if you don't, you have ADHD or they give you all these things. But that very early lesson of sit still, it's another manifestation of something many boys and men are kind of exposed to throughout their lives, which is this: that thing that's happening in your body, ignore it and override it with your head. So that urge to move, that's bad. Override it with your head. Again, it's changing, and this doesn't just happen to boys, but it still happens. A phrase I still hear in the world: stop crying. You're fine. Get up. It's okay. You're tough, right? You can just feel it. And again, there's tons of research studies, whether it's cultural, who cares where it comes from? Boys and girls are raised differently. Be tough. What's happening in your body? Ignore it and override it. So emotionally, we start to get that lesson. Physically, we get that lesson around movement. Then we hit adolescence, puberty is happening, and we start doing that to each other very quickly. Boys' bodies are adjusting, developing at different speeds. So there's this kind of hold it all in, don't let myself be noticed, don't do anything that would give anyone any ammo to bully me. So hold it inside and be tough, right? Don't show weakness. Don't show any vulnerability. Whatever's going on inside you, override it. Then we get launched into the world, into some careers, and what are men generally rewarded for or considered successful? Wow, he works 80 hours a week. That guy is just crushing it. And he just works non-stop. How do we do that? Ignore what's happening in our body and override it with our heads, right? A lot of the military is the same way. And again, there's both genders now there, but the gestalt of this is, what this guy Tony Porter kind of popularized, is something called the man box. And essentially, it's this idea that boys and men are expected to live within the confines of a certain box. And there's literally a checklist. If you don't check the boxes, you're not considered a man. And one of the biggest ones, the most primary ones, is masculinity means invulnerability. That's what it means to be a man. He's invulnerable. He's tough as nails, doesn't need help, never stops, etc., etc. And one last piece on this, and then they did this incredible research study where they interviewed both men and women. That's what's interesting here, around two things. What marks the transition from a girl into a woman? And what marks the transition from a boy into a man? With girls, again, I'm not saying this is good, but both men and women tended to ascribe that transition to physiology. Oh, her body has changed. She has a cycle, right? She's a woman now. She can have children. With boys, guess what? Not based on physical development. It's based on cultural factors. How responsible is he? How is he showing up in his family, in his community, in his work? Is he doing anything with his life? right? It's a different pressure. And you add all this together, and boys are launched into the world as men without any training around something really critical. What's happening in my body? How can I share that? And what do I do about it? AKA our emotions, right? And in the work I do, all emotions start as sensations in our physical body. And so if we're cut off from our body, we're cut off from our emotions. And we don't know how to talk about them. We don't know how to name them. Man, when I was in my 20s, my range was good, bad, and fine. Like that was what I could describe. Oh, I'm good. I'm fine. Yeah, no, I'm kind of bad today. Like that was it. I couldn't name what actually I was feeling in my body for a long time. And the challenge with that then is when we do particularly feel dysregulated emotionally or physically, when we're not feeling good in our bodies and we don't know what it is, let alone how to share it or what to do about it. What do most men do to change their state? Like I did? We turn to something on the outside to make us feel different on the inside. Porn, weed, alcohol, video games, food, overworking, TV, you name it. And it's just getting worse, every year. So in a large part, we're launched into this modern world and then we're thrust into this hyper, at least, I think you guys got a little bit of it down there, but man, here in the States, hyper masculine individualized culture. Like it's all about the individual. Oh, I don't need anybody. The Marlboro man, the romantic cowboy, he's just out doing his own thing is the dream we're sold here. And it's frankly bullshit and it kills men. It actually kills men. There's just more and more research about what that way of living does. But we think it's awesome. And so there's a crisis, right? Like you're pointing to right now, that there's a lot of boys, there's a lot of young men, there's a lot of older men who are not doing well. And that's, I think, where men's work comes in, which is, okay, we need to learn to initiate each other and take each other on a journey of what does it mean in a healthy way to take full responsibility for your pain and your life and your emotions so you can show up and create the life you want. And turns out that takes training. We actually have to build certain skills and capacities and frankly, relationships, which is where men's groups really come in.
Yeah, awesome. There was so much you just said there that I resonate with so much. And I think a lot of guys will, from stoic masculinity and the pressures put on us from a young age, not to cry, to be tough, to keep pushing through, to keep grinding. We like to, we refer to that at Midlife Mavericks as the warrior archetype. The
Yeah.
warrior is the soul battler, and he wants to be in every fight and he wants to do everything. But at some point, that's just going to burn him out, and he doesn't care about his relationships. He's just so focused on what can I get and how can I get more. And it might serve us for a short period of our life, but like you say, as we start to get older, the warrior isn't here to serve us forever. And if we don't have those relationships and we don't have that connection, and I think, like you said, if we don't have that emotional intelligence, well, then we start to struggle in terms of fulfillment, in terms of disconnect from our bodies, from our relationships, from our health, from so many different things. And I think you covered that really well. It was really sort of insightful. The emotional thing, I think, guys are great in our head. We're great thinkers, and I think we're great with our hands. We're great doers. We want to fix everything. And I think that's where we go to. We go to the mind or we go to the physical. But how do we get into, I'm curious, like, how do we tap into that emotional side? Because I'm fine, I'm great, I'm tired, I'm shit, I'm hungry. That's the emotions we know. What have you found? Like, when you started doing this work, how did you get deeper into recognizing those emotions and being able to speak about those emotions?
Yeah, I needed guidance. I frankly needed guidance. And it was a blend of some somatic therapists and many older, wiser men who would be sitting with me, let's say in a circle. And as I'm speaking, would bottom line it. I think there's grief inside you. I'm feeling grief as I sit here with you. And then I'm like, what? But then it's a doorway in for me to start to mark. Oh, Yeah, actually, that's what that thing is. That's grief. And, that for a lot of guys and gals, frankly, this is one of the things that's missing in what I'm particularly passionate about that I actually think is the most important role for parents with their children is this whole idea of co-regulation, right? When we're young, we have these intense feelings in our body. We don't have the names for it, but when mom or dad gets down on their knees, looks us in the eye and says, "You're really mad right now, aren't you? You're mad. You want the cookie and you can't have it. And that makes you mad," right? When they mirror that to us, that's how we start to learn to connect. Oh, this heat I'm feeling in my belly right now, that's anger. Now I kind of know what that is. As someone from a place of emotional neglect, I didn't get any of that. So I needed guidance, particularly from guys in groups on the outside. They were so sensitive in their bodies, they could often feel what was going on in mine before I had words for it. And they were often very correct. And so they would presence that, and it helped me start to get the programming in a sense, right? We call this interoception, the awareness of what's happening inside of us, right? Proprioception, the awareness of how our body's moving through space. Most people know that, right? Like you hit the ball, like great. Interoception's, oh, what's that inside me? What is my body feeling right now? And then we learn to communicate that. So it was a lot being in men's groups and frankly being led into my emotions, which I am now super passionate about, is one of the great gifts we can give each other as men, just to slow each other down and help each other connect to our direct felt body experience, right? Just literally get connected to what you're feeling. And turns out on the other side of that, we often have all kinds of insights about what we need to do. Um, And a lot of times we waste a tremendous amount of energy trying to avoid feeling because it's so scary. It's like a black hole. We have a senses in there, but we don't really know. And we've been taught, it's weak or whatever. And so for a lot of guys, how I, help get them in there, frankly, we like to get shit done as men. So I talk about it just from performance that, you can that stop crying bit we were talking about. You can imagine, right? I come up to a 4-year-old boy who's sad. He's in grief. He's crying. If I walk up to him and I'm like, "Stop crying," how does he do it?
Just holds it in, buries it,
Yep.
pushes it down.
Tightens his body, holds his breath, literally hold, pack it in. That's how we hold emotion. Literally, we will stop it in our system. And then, right? If I'm like right now, right? Okay, contract all the muscles in your body, right? Just your abs, your shoulder, your biceps. You don't even have to move. Just tighten it up. And I'm like, do this for an hour. It gets pretty exhausting pretty fast. It takes a lot of metabolic resource to hold emotion inside of us. And they're right. They're getting the science behind this more and more in terms of our fascia and the waist, even literally down in the cells. Hearts tighten up and blood flow goes down. It takes energy to do all that. And then we wonder, right? I think my sense is you and I might be similar age, but most guys, we come into the world, we got this kind of preloaded debit card with quite a bit of chi, right? In our 20s, we're just hitting it, burning hard, playing hard, partying hard, working hard. For most guys, you start to hit your mid 30s and there's like ooh, that took a little longer to recover from. You hit your 40s and 50s, it's like, whoa, there is not an unlimited resource here of energy anymore. I got to start to manage this. And for so many guys I work with, one of their biggest challenges, just having enough energy to be present in their lives and relationships, kids, work, etc. And it turns out a lot of that is often being wasted on holding emotional content and trauma inside. So when we start to learn the tools to go inside and metabolize it, quite literally, let these places inside of us relax by deeply feeling. I mean, it's one of the great joys I have in doing work with men, quite literally seeing them come back alive, right? Their voices deepen, their belly softens, their faces brighten up, their eyes get wider, their face relaxes. You're like, you're alive now, man. Because all that energy that was being wasted on holding is now available for them to move forward the things they want to move forward in life. So it takes training, it takes practice, it takes mentorship. And again, I love how you can kind of swirl all three of those together into men's groups.
I like what you said, and I really like what you said about the kids and how we interact with our kids, what we say to our kids, how important that is. I think for a lot of parents out there, we can be tired, we can be frustrated, we can be impatient, and we might be able to tell our kids to stop crying or, not pay attention to their feelings. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry, and be supportive like that. So that's a big wake up call to a lot of dads out there, and maybe some mums too, but they're probably way more in touch than we are. I also liked, you touched there's a lot of great stuff you touched on there. I think I always like to say, like, men often like to hide in the places where they're successful. So, we go to work, we're achieving, we're ticking the boxes. So we bury ourselves in work and we do more work because it's a safe environment where we probably feel like we're achieving something. Or for me
Hmm.
personally, it was with training. Like, training's a big part of my identity. I've been a personal trainer and a coach for many years, but training was the place where I'd hide. I've got goals. I can move towards those goals. I can focus on training and dedicate hours and hours and hours to it. But what am I really doing there? Am I running away from the relationships in my life that aren't working? Am I not focusing in on other parts of my life, my freedom, my lifestyle, things that are not going as well as what I want? So I keep putting myself in that safe environment or that environment where I'm ticking all the boxes, feeling like I'm successful, but ignoring a lot of what else is going on in my life and being able to step back from that. And now that I'm sort of reaching that, that midlife point that you talked about, it's questioning that. It's like, why do I need to train so hard? Or why do I need to work so hard? And what am I working for? Like, what am I pushing
Yeah.
for? If I'm pushing to be a provider and show up for my family, well, what, am I being present? Am I actually there for my family? Like, all these questions just start to come into my mind, and it's like reflecting on that. And again, it's that warrior energy moving into maybe king energy, looking at life in a different way and trying to decide, the path we want to take. One of the things I want to talk about is I think a lot of men are reluctant to step into men's groups where I don't know whether there's a fear there of what's going to happen. Maybe we don't want to be vulnerable. I don't know. What do you feel is holding men back from stepping into this environment and doing this work?
Yeah, I would say different manifestations of fear.
Mm,
One of which is, a lot of guys I work with, one of the places they were most hurt is by other men, is by the masculine, whether it was an abusive father, bullying friends. Like a lot of guys, it's not just like a theoretical, I got to keep my cards close to my chest. It's a real thing where if I put stuff out there, I'm going to be attacked for it. So a number of men I work with have that, or, you know, just did had experiences where it's hard to trust men, right? He stole my girlfriend or he stole my woman or, took my job, went behind my back. Those are real things. So I think there's some real fear there. And then I think there's the emotional component that we're afraid of emotions. And frankly, it's crazy to speak this, but there's some very real homophobia, right?
mm,
We are taught that any kind of connection with man, I mean, you can just think of the things that are said in locker rooms for most young boys, right? And that shit still is said these days. And the problem with that is it robs us men of so much connection. And it's one of the reasons I've worked with a lot of men who then get themselves into highly dysfunctional, intimate relationships because it's the only place they're getting any kind of emotional or physical connection. And so we have that need as men. And when we're not getting it anywhere else, we'll feel desperate to get it in the avenues that are so-called acceptable. So this is where guys get into, pretty dysfunctional, sometimes abusive relationships. Um, versus sitting down with some guys and being forward. And, it's this interesting thing that I've experienced with most men, that we're also afraid of feedback, right? When we're in our little own world doing our thing, we kind of have control. But when I step in and I'm like, hey, you're spending, 30 hours at the gym, but how's your son? You're like, I don't have time for him. And I'm like, really? Like, are you really not have time with him, or are you choosing that? That starts to kick something in gear where we're kind of held accountable. And that is scary for men. But that is exactly how we grow as the masculine. We need feedback, right? Iron sharpens iron. We've all heard the phrase. And we get that in men's groups. In a good men's group, there is no hiding. Men will see you, and they will tell you what they see. And some guys, that's scary, because it means their life's going to have to change, frankly. But with more guys, what I find is once they get through that little bit of fear, most men I have met are deeply craving what Terry Real calls carefrontation, and what I name as the spinach in the teeth moment of I walk up to you and I'm like, dude, got a big thing of spinach in your teeth. And you're like, oh, no, oh, shit, you're right. There's a little bit of embarrassment, but then you're also like, thank you for telling me, because I've been walking around all day and all these other folks didn't tell me anything. Paradoxically, I now trust you more because you told me the hard thing, not to shame me, but because you care about me and you want the best for me. And that's the space, of men's groups. And some guys, just to kind of tie together the emotions and fear, I think there's just an intuitive sense that if I sit down and get real with men, I'm going to have to feel more, right? I'm going to have to feel more. And that's the thing that's terrifying for us guys. If no one's ever walked us through that. And then one last one, this is just straight from the field, so to speak, is I don't want to be a burden. Oh, I don't want to share with you how hard things are for me because I don't want you to feel bad hearing how tough my life is. So guys, zip the lip and keep it inside, thinking that's going to help you when it doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, you said a lot of great stuff there, and I think a lot of men can probably relate to that. That fear of stepping into the men's group, the fear of like opening up and being vulnerable, putting our struggles onto other men, we can be very reluctant about, because I think as men, we're not very good at maybe dealing with that. We ask our mates how they are and we want them to say, fine, good, okay, whatever. We
Yeah,
don't want them to open up and say, actually, mate, I'm having trouble with this, because we're not given the language to learn how to deal with that. We often want
100%.
to jump to fix and say, oh, mate, you should try this, or, oh, you'll be right. We pat them on the back and tell them to keep going. But just being able to sit and listen, and to hear what other men's struggles are, but the relationships that we can build just by hearing those conversations and knowing that we're not alone, can be very insightful and can really help us, I suppose, unlock that emotion, but also,
Yeah.
see that there is probably a path forward that we might not have thought about. Um, I'm curious, like we talked a lot about masculinity in terms of stoic masculinity and what's being put on us as a kid and how that's affecting us as we grow up. So what is healthy masculinity, do you think?
Yeah, totally. I mean, at the most esoteric level, so I'm going to go a little out there here for a moment, right? The masculine is the part of all of us. So it doesn't matter if you're born in a male body, female body, whatever kind of body. It's the part of us that is aware and witnesses, like in the deepest traditions. The part of us that witnesses and sees. And the feminine inside of all of us is everything else. All the feelings, all the emotions, all the thoughts, our body, anything that changes, right? So the healthy masculine essentially is, I kind of tie it to three things. It's when we're grounded and relaxed in our body. This is a big one, right? So many of us guys, me included, walking around, so busy, so burdened, so tired, life's so hard. I want to be winning here. I'm losing here. You don't understand. And there's like tension in us, right? There's a lot of tension in us. The healthiest masculine is actually quite grounded, quite relaxed, and often very still. It's not a lot of movement. We move with consciousness versus just for the sake of moving. So that's one component. And the second component is in the heart space, right? The kind of three body intelligences. We have the gut, the body, the heart, which is the part of us that's deeply open, attuned, and relating in the moment. And this is, right, so funny. A little bit of a language tweak. If I'm like, this guy's really in touch with his emotions, right? It's like, we could think of all the things we'd say about that guy. If I'm like, this guy's got really deep instincts. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's cool, right? Instincts are awesome. It's the same thing, right? It's the part of us that is able to receive information, and particularly information from other people. And that makes us great leaders, frankly, both with the heart space, which again is kind of connected to the body. It builds upon it. Um, you and your listeners probably have heard of the vagal nerve, right? It's that big bundle of nerves that basically connects our brain to our body. It's like the information superhighway. They've done a little research, right? Guess what? Only 20% of the bandwidth, this massive information superhighway in our bodies, goes from brain to body. 80% of the information is body to brain. So if we're not in our bodies physically receiving information, which allows us to emotionally receive information from the people we're with, we're losing out on 80% of the information we need to be effective leaders and make good choices. Just very simple, very functional. But going back to healthy masculine, so we're grounded and relaxed in our bodies. We're open, connected, and attuned in our hearts and in the relational space, both to our emotions and the emotions of people around us. And then in our mind, we're able to put our attention on what we want to put it on in any given moment in service of depth. Where can I put my attention right now to create the most depth in my life, in my relationships, in my community, and in my world? And we kind of swirl that all together then with this capacity to be somewhat aware of the part of us that is just aware. It's a little weird to think about, but when we do that, we are holding so-called the grounded, divine, sacred, whatever you want to call it, masculine. That isn't something I think almost everyone has experienced, even if they didn't have the words for it, right? I'm around this person, and just being around them, whether it's a man or woman, right? We can both cultivate our inner masculine. Just being around them, my nervous system relaxes. I feel safer and I feel more present. And that happens when a man cultivates those three energy centers and that awareness of awareness. And this is where a lot of guys, myself included, man, I'm telling you, Stretch, get a little lost is if my awareness is on my thoughts, that ain't it. Because thoughts are constantly changing. Thoughts are actually our feminine. So we thinking is going to make us more masculine as men, but no, oftentimes it's less. Anytime we're focused on less, we're bringing in more masculine energy. How could I move across the room? With as much intention as possible. A to Z. That's our masculine. It's not necessarily, and I do this work because we got to cultivate it. It's not necessarily the big, loud, rah, 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 rah thing. It's sit down, right? Cuts right through that. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to mess with that guy. He's too relaxed, right? You talk to martial artists, they talk about that, right? It's one of the things. You do enough training, your body relaxes. As a martial artist, they teach you don't hold any tension you don't have to in any given moment because you're wasting energy and you'll get tired faster. So, can you come in relaxed and have your attention where you want it to be? So, there's more, but I kind of swirl that all together and that blows up, a lot of some of the misconceptions I often hear about what it is. And, last thing I'll say, and it's a bit heated, particularly here in the States, maybe down there too. I don't believe in the toxic masculine. Like, I don't believe in toxic feminine or toxic masculine because toxic means without any redeeming quality. There's no hope.
Mm.
And instead, I think what we're dealing with the ramifications of in culture is disconnected and pathological masculine. And where that mostly shows up and where men do become the most dangerous, in my opinion, and there's plenty of evidence in history, is what happens when we're disconnected from our hearts, when we're no longer in touch with impact on the environment or people. That's when we can do things that are pretty awful, frankly. But when the heart's there, fuck, we want more masculine energy in the world right now.
Mm. I like what you said. It's like leading with different energy, and it's leading with intention. So it's
Yes.
like turning up as the man you truly want to be. You're not living by someone else's script. You're not doing what you've been told to do. It's connecting with, well, hey, what is really important to me? You talked about what matters.
Yeah.
And when we
Yes.
know that, looking inside and figuring out what it is we want and trying to silence that bloody inner critic, mate. We're all stuck in our head. We're all saying we should do more. We
Yeah.
should be more. I wasn't good enough. That's going on. You talked about connecting with the heart and you talked about like being in your body. So I'm curious what that means to you and how do you go about being in your body more?
Practice. So a large part of what I support men around is embodiment practice. So literally doing the practices to get more connected to my body. And there's countless ways you can do that. And like a lot of practices, oddly enough, the same ones that can help you eject from your body can also be used to get you in your body. It's just how you approach it, right? I know a lot of distance runners. It's like, yeah, what are you running away from? And like, pretty clear
Been there,
the
done
level
that.
the level you're hitting your body, there's something there. But there's another way to run to really get intimately connected to your body, which for a lot of us men does tend to involve uncomfortable, vigorous physical practice where we have to learn in the midst of intensity how to stay connected and actually feel so we don't overdo it, and how to control where we want to put our awareness. So, it can be anything. It can be weightlifting. It can be yoga. It can be Kundalini. It can be Qigong. Um, it can be going for a great hike to actually get you connected to what am I feeling? How am I breathing? Right? You can become more embodied as a man instantaneously. You don't have to go off and get any training. It's to become aware of your breath, moment to moment, all day long. That's it. Who in any relationship, whoever's breathing the most deeply is holding the masculine pole. That's it. That's the depth. And so much men's work, embodiment work, is focused around the breath and learning to actually work with our breath. I breathe deeper, which downshifts my system, relaxes me, softens me. I'm not wasting energy. My mind can become more focused. Uh, so there's that kind of at the physical level. And then, like I said, there's getting into relationship where we have to learn to feel more and where we are felt more. And, contrary to a lot of belief, men have very deep intuitions and emotional attunement. We're told we don't and we're dumb as bricks. No, it's actually, we're just not trained. But very quickly, we can learn that, oh, what I'm feeling in my body is often related to what I'm feeling in the person I'm with's body. And when I'm feeling it in my body, sometimes that's a cue that someone is feeling it in their body. And that becomes one of the ways we can lead is checking in with what we're feeling and feeling into others essentially. And it's one of the great capacities, we learn to I train a lot of men on is as we get into our bodies, as we get more emotionally attuned to our hearts, we can be sitting there present with our partner and we can feel what she's feeling. Yeah, I get a sense. Seems like you're really stressed out right now. I'm wondering if you're really worried about the thing tomorrow. Right. And they're like, oh, and might burst into tears, just knowing that we felt and saw them. Right. It's one of the great gifts we can bring into any relationship. So, yeah, I kind of rambled there, but training, it takes training. There's physical practices we can do, there's emotional practices we can do. And the nature of embodiment practices is got bad news for you guys. There is no hack. You just have to do it. Even if you did it last week, you got to do it again. Get back into your body, get connected to your breath, and get present.
Mm. What comes up for me when you said that was just presence. When you've just finished there on that word presence, but that was what I was thinking. It's like we're so
Yep.
busy all the time, and we're always trying to be so productive that we can be training and then trying to absorb a podcast at the same time. And it's like my mind's somewhere and my body's somewhere else. And it's like, when am I in the same place at the same time? When am I actually
Yeah.
mind and body present in the same space? So whether that's through breathing, whether that's through qigong, whether that's through training, there's moments in my training where I'm just 100% present. And I found that a lot with skill development. Like when you're learning to juggle or you're learning to handstand or you're learning to do something that's new and challenging, you've got to be present. You can't have your mind racing around doing other things. So maybe that challenge of doing something new, getting out of the comfort zone where we have to really sort of think about it, could be a great way to be more in our bodies than in our heads.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like what you said there, and I like that you finished on presence because that's what was in my mind. And consistency, like we talk about the best way to get results in the gym is it's not about how much weight you lift, it's not about how many reps you do, it's not about the intensity, it's just about consistency. Showing up
Hmm.
consistently is going to be the best thing to get results. So being in your body, you've got to have that practice as well. I liked how you started to talk about relationships because that's something I wanted to tap into too, because I think and I probably experience it too. Sometimes it's our relationships as we get older. Through school we're connected to our mates. Maybe we're connected through sport. We have a good group of mateship. But then when we go to work, we maybe just hanging out with our work colleagues or the people around us. We maybe don't make too much time for our mates. We start to lose connection. All these things start to disappear, and then we get to this point in life where we realize, shit, I really don't have any close mates anymore. So there's that part of the relationship we start to drop off with. And then the other thing is, like, I suppose, talk about our intimate relationships with our partner. And it's like how we're showing up in that relationship, how we can be more present and aware of our partners and create deeper relationships. So I guess my question is about, like, men as we age, like, what is it that we need to do to be able to maintain those deeper relationships, do you think?
Yeah. I'll repeat ad nauseum here, join a men's group. And
Yeah.
it is a real challenge, right? Particularly when you get into busy work, if you start a family, if you got a spouse, these are the first things that often go. And and then on top of that, this is where some of that kind of box culture comes in that, right? I work with guys all the time. It's like, yeah, I just spent the weekend with my mates, but none of them know my wife's about to leave me because we don't talk about that kind of stuff. Right? I don't know how to talk about that kind of stuff. And so I might be around other men, but still feeling incredibly lonely. This is the thing. Loneliness can happen whether you're actually around people or not. And part of what that comes from is we're not taught how to connect, get present with each other, and go under the surface and be ding, 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 vulnerable. Because we're taught men aren't vulnerable. They're invulnerable, right? But the paradox is the very things that actually often create the most connection are the most vulnerable ones, right? When I get guys coming into group and they see another man bring forward something they're feeling challenged in, some kind of shame they're experiencing, and they're like, whoa, I thought I was totally alone and I was the only one. And now I feel so connected to you that you were so brave to share that. And it relaxes something in me because it makes me think, oh, maybe I'm not messed up and broken and dysfunctional. And it actually creates connection when we do that. And again, we're just not taught to do that as men. Most guys, by default, we are taught to relate via triangulation, which just means me and you have our attention on some third thing. And our connection comes from having the shared attention on the sports game, on the car repair, on the politics, on you name it, whatever that literally, you see it in sports bars, right? Nobody's looking at each other, right? We're all
Yeah.
looking somewhere else. That's kind of side by side default masculine culture. And there's a time and place for that. I'm not here to like rag on that. But when that's the only thing, that's what can cause this desperate loneliness inside of men of like, I can't talk about this with anyone, so I got to hold it inside and toughen up. And when I get home, it's too overwhelming. So I have another couple of drinks just to take the edge off. In men's group, the practice men are being called and asked to do right now is turn towards each other, put our attention on each other and say, Stretch man, what's going on in your life? What's working? Where are you in pain? What's not? What do you want? What do you want your life to be? You know, it doesn't have to be super complicated. And what I have found is when that space is open, men have plenty to share. When the space is open, they have plenty to share and they get so much energy from it. And they come back vitalized for life in a lot of ways. And so it does take some training, and it's a bit countercultural to how a lot of us guys are programmed. So it takes some risk and real, genuine leadership to take the conversation deeper beneath the surface, really focusing on how are you feeling right here and now.
I like that. It's the vulnerability muscle. Like, how often do we flex the vulnerability muscle? A muscle that we probably don't even know where it is. So it's like, it's a hard thing to step into for a lot of men, and self included. I think, you know, I've lived that life of all the time just pushing and striving. And there was a point in my life where I owned a gym and we had 300 members. And every day I'm at the gym and
Wow.
I'm surrounded by people, and it's an environment I love and everything. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is really great. I've got a great community around me. But how many of them actually know me? Like really know me,
Yeah.
and how many deep conversations am I actually having with these people? And that I got to a point where I realized that even though I'm surrounded by so many people every day, I'm lonely. I don't have
Yeah.
deep connections and deep relationships there. And I think it can be that fake positive or that fake thing of thinking, okay, I've got loads of mates and loads of connection, but really, who can I talk to? How can I open up? Who can I express to what's going on and how I'm feeling? And having that trust, like there's that level of trust that's got to be built before you can open up and share, you know, your deepest feelings and your struggles and sort of what's going on for you. So I'm really grateful for you sort of sharing that about vulnerability and that practice of being more vulnerable. I'd like to maybe step in and talk a little bit about the work you do in terms of the men's circle, because from the outside looking in, we think, oh, men just go and sit in the circle and they talk about their problems. I don't want to sit down and hear about men's problems, so I'm going to shut down or I'm not going to go with that. So can you give us a bit of an insight that might help men actually connect and go, oh, you know what? That sounds interesting. Maybe that's something I should do.
Yeah, yeah. You know, first thing I'll say about men's groups is it's kind of funny. And like, you ask someone, like, hey, do you do meditation? And they're like, yeah. And then you're like, well, what kind? Because there's actually a huge range within that term. It can mean a lot of things. Men's groups and men's circles can mean the same thing, right? There's everything from recovery groups, support groups, uh, embodiment groups, accountability groups, practice groups. Like you can get the whole range. The groups I tend to focus on are a little bit of all of those, meaning we're getting together and we're usually doing some kind of practice, even if it's short, to get more present. Like quite literally, like right here and now, to get present and more connected to your direct experience. That's kind of the baseline. And then from there, sometimes there's different activities, but the central thing is going deeper with one or all men, or a couple men, depends on the exact kind of container of the circle, where that man can bring something forward that, as I've been saying these days, kind of a little bit of wordplay, but like, what has your attention in life? Or where are you? This is often the bigger one for men. Where are you in tension? Where is there tension in your life? And what's the impact of that? And what do you want? Such a simple question, but can completely, just that alone, can change men's lives, right? Sometimes the fear is true. Man's coming in for 6 months. He's been moaning about his job and how much it sucks. Well, what do you want? What do you want? That will cause a man to have to come to some kind of bigger depth. And it's that practice of we help each other get more present to what we're actually feeling. And on the other side of that, there's often an impulse to take some kind of action. It's really that simple. Because one of the many reasons we don't want to feel as men is, right, we've all heard the platitude. It's right there in the word. Emotion. Emotion. Energy in motion. Stuff happens in our life, in our environment. Emotion is a biochemical result of that is supposed to trigger some kind of action. That's it. We're not feeling, guess what? We don't take as much action. When we finally feel, when I slow you down, maybe I've been with you, I've been watching you for a year, I'm seeing the stress, seeing the isolation build, and I'm like, hey man, like, what's really going on with work? Because you say it's good, then I see you coming in here seeming more and more depleted every week. What's going on? What are you feeling? And then we just hold with you. We hold in the presence, right? Might ask some follow-up questions, whatever. And at some point, what happens is you drop into your body and maybe you connect to some fear or maybe some grief. And it's immediate and visceral when you're actually feeling it. And on the other side of that, that's when real action starts to happen of like, fuck, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. And then things don't drag out forever once guys really start feeling. So a good men's group is going to slow someone down and get them more connected. And like I said, give pretty strong, loving feedback about how we're experiencing each other. Yeah, you said this was a priority in your life, but you haven't checked in about it in 4 months, right? So like, do you really want to do that? For a lot of guys, there's what we want, and then there's what we want to want, right? And a lot of us guys want to want certain things in our lives, and we think we're putting attention on them and that we value them. But really, all of our energy is going over here. And a good men's group is going to name that when they see it and hold your feet to the fire of like, yeah, you've been saying you want to get out of that job, but you haven't put any time into getting your resume done. So do you really want to? And then there's kind of a pathway back to integrity that usually comes from one of two directions. Either you start to do the thing you actually said you were going to do, right? And we help you with that, give you structure, accountability, things that men can really support each other with. Or we help you renegotiate. Actually, I don't want to do that. Actually, this is what I want to do. And so I'm going to stop telling myself that story and start living this story. And again, the nervous system kind of relaxes. So, it's kind of hard for me to describe. Again, there's a lot of structure, but the structure is leading towards depth. Where do I want my life to be going? And what's in the way of me getting there? I mean, you could do a whole out in men's group just on that. Because so many of us men, you're right, we never even stop to think about it. We're taught to get on the escalator from, college on or whatever. Like you got to work, 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 work so you can make the money, so you can be successful, so you can earn love. And then what? And most guys have never figured out, and then what? Or they fall for the trap, right? The provision trap you talked about. It's, oh, I got a provision for my family and for my kids. And then they spend 30 years working 60 hours a week, and they've actually missed their kids' lives. The kids hit 18. Partner's like, you and I haven't had a relationship in 18 years. I'm not in love with you. There's nothing here. I'm done. I get a lot of guys coming to me at that phase, and it's hard because they were told one thing. Hey, if you show up and do this, that's a successful man. Might have worked, 75 years ago. Doesn't work now. But they've never stopped to ask themselves, well, if I'm going to work my ass off and make all this money, what's it for?
Yeah.
Right? What do I actually want to do with it? And then, it starts to break up guys' lives a lot of times when they realize, again, kind of coming out of that warrior phase, that it's like, what's the point of having all this money in the bank if I'm stressed up? My body is having autoimmune disorders. I have no relationship. I work all the time. Like, literally, what's the point? And that can be a deep hole for a man when he first confronts it. But lo and behold, when you're sitting with other men, they'll be right there in it with you. So yeah, a good group, emotions are part of it, but they're in service of, a lot. Maybe another way to just kind of sum this up for the masculine part of all of us, and this is what a men's group can serve. Really, the whole MO comes down to, how do you have to start living your life now?
Mm.
So if the horrible thing came and you got a diagnosis or you got hit by a car, in your last breath, even if it was unexpected, you were able to go out relaxed, not contracted, not I should have, or oh my God, I never, or I didn't. You can just feel it. The deep fear a lot of us men carry of I never, I didn't complete. So a men's group is going to help you figure out, how do you have to live now so you can die free?
Jason, so much, mate. So much. Thank you for that, what you just said. What I got out of that was like slowing down. Like, how often do us men
Yeah.
slow down and actually ask those powerful questions of like, what do I want in life? Am I living true to my values? Am I living true to the purpose, the legacy, everything I want to create by following, the social norm of the checklist of go to uni, get a job, climb the corporate ladder, make a lot of money, buy the house, buy the car, whatever it is, is that really fulfilling me? Or is there something missing? And we don't stop back. We just keep running at those goalposts, but are we even going to the right goalposts? We don't ask, what does success look like to me? And I think like men's groups has the ability to create that awareness and to allow us to step off the train and decide where we want to go instead of just following that one direction. So that's really good. I also like the way you frame that question of like, where is the tension? Because if we talk about struggle, we talk about pain, or we talk about what's not going well, I think men can shut down with those words, but just the selection of words, where do I feel tension? Because all men, I feel, I'm speaking myself, there are parts of my life where I feel tension. It could be tension in my relationship. It could be tension in my training, tension in my work. But if I am feeling that tension, well, why am I feeling that tension? What's not aligned there for me? What's not working for me there? And what can I do to change that? Like, that's a powerful question to sit on itself. Like, I don't have to sit there and absorb that tension. I need to listen to it. And I need to go, hey, well, something's not aligned here. I need to question that. And then figure out, the emotion, or how you talked about any energy and motion. Like, what can I do here to experiment with making change? I could fail, but at least I'm trying. I'm trying to work on fixing that tension or getting away from that tension. And I think the big power, another thing you mentioned there, was the accountability piece. Who in your
Yes.
life is holding you accountable? Which men are holding you accountable? Because it's easy to get stuck on autopilot and say we're going to do stuff and just not stick to those goals. But when we create accountability, Like, that's such a powerful thing. And just having someone check in on us on that accountability, that's the thing that's going to create the big shift. Because I think as men, when we put ourselves out there and we say we're going to do something, personally, I want to make sure I get that done. If I tell someone about it, it's something that's, going to lock me into that and make me sort of keep working on that part of my life. Whereas if I hold it in, like, and no one knows, oh, it's easy to stay on autopilot, or I'll get to that later, or, oh, yeah, it's not that important, really. I think we can really put it
Yeah.
off. So many fine little points that you spoke about there that I think a lot of us, I know I can relate to, but I think a lot of us can relate to. So I really appreciate that, Jason. One more thing I want to touch on there, because we talked a bit about relationships, and you talked about, a lot of men coming to you at that point, maybe where their relationship's broken down. They haven't been connected in their relationship. They've been so busy trying to provide and do all the things that they think are serving, but in reality, they've created that distance. So what is it, do you think, that the feminine really wants from the masculine? Or how can we start to improve our relationships with our partner?
You said it earlier. It's the name of one of my programs, presence. There's a certain amount of security, sure, functionality the feminine often wants from men. But more and more these days, one of the great challenges a lot of men I do work with are coming with is, shit, my woman makes more money than me. She's more successful than me. So what do women need men for, right? We hear this stuff. And the great gift of the masculine is deep, grounded, full presence. I'm here with you right now. It sounds so simple, but it is completely transformative when we learn to bring it in to relationship. And a big part of that, one of the skills that can really help men get ahead these days, is we often, again, think about provisioning in terms of the external world, the money, the house, those kinds of structures. More and more, one of the great gifts we can bring as men is to take on the emotional labor of the relationship. By default, most relationships put the emotional labor on the woman. She's got to bring it up. Are you okay? This thing, how are we going to da? Oftentimes, us men, we're just not driving the ball forward there. But when we learn to create the space to have those conversations, relationships flourish. And the other thing, particularly for fathers, this is a big thing I do train them on these days, is I'm very involved in my kids' lives, right? Way certainly more than my dad was. And I try to be, and I've structured how I live my life, my work, all of that, so I can be very present for my kids throughout the day. And not that every man has to, but all that said, for as much as I'm trying, particularly in those early years, my wife does more. She's breastfeeding, she's tracking the little things, the thank you cards for birthday. Like, it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things. And there's, for any guy that's like, nah, there's some pretty brutal, sobering audits you can do as a family around, okay, how's the workload really break down? And most men are pretty stunned often, right? So all that said, one way we can deeply serve our partners is by taking on the responsibility for tracking the well-being of the relationship itself. How are we doing? So being the one who creates the time and place for you two to prioritize the relationship, which is that same thing. We're going to get together. This is a challenge I've, had to lead, and it's hard for my wife and I. Get together, no devices, no talking about kids, no talking about work, and our attention has to be on each other. You get going on in the years in a relationship, it's pretty shocking how little that actually happens. And I get it, right? Some days it's like, man, I just want to collapse on the couch and watch TV and fall asleep with her, right? I don't want to be relational. I'm not saying you have to do this all the time, but as men, if you can learn to bring deep presence and create relational space for each other, it is unbelievably valuable. And that presence, then, just to kind of tie it back together, right, has to be made up of those three things. How relaxed and grounded and in your body are you actually? How open and present and actually able to feel, be felt are you? And how much are you able to, I know it's stupid simple, but control where your attention is, right? If I'm sitting with my woman and I'm thinking about work, she feels that. And what does that teach her body? He values work more than me.
Mm. Yeah, I
Why
like
am
it.
I with this guy? And so as we learn to bring all of that into that deep presence, that's where the feminine, in this case, again, I'm kind of speaking heterosexual. That's where the feminine really opens and feels seen and held and like they can relax into us. This is a thing a lot of guys don't get, right? Again, it's not necessarily just male, female, but the masculine is the riverbanks. The feminine part of all of us is the water that flows through, right? And so the feminine will take the shape of our form. So guess what? If I'm all stressed out, tense in my body, exhausted from overworking, and then I come home and I wonder why my woman doesn't want to be intimate with me, there you go. Sorry,
Mm.
right? Why would she want to be? It'll bring her body into stress to be around your body when it's in stress. So our work is what's the work I need to do, setting boundaries in my life, bringing proper structures into managing my work, managing my health, getting enough sleep, eating well, drinking enough water. I mean, these are super basic things, but so when we're together, I feel relaxed in my body and I have enough energy to be present with her. I call it I call this the shit work of life stretch. Like it's not the sexy stuff they tell you about on Instagram, right? Be the divine masculine. No, like sometimes that means like you got to say no to the thing at work so you can come home and sit under the tree in the backyard for 10 minutes and your nervous system can unwind. So when you walk in, your belly is soft, your shoulders are relaxed, there is breath in you. She will feel that and she will want to be around that. And that becomes a gift to her, to your kids, to your family, etc.
That's what I want to say, mate. Like, it's just the king energy showing up, isn't it? And what really rang for me as you spoke about that was like to be present and to be present with someone else that's you care about that deeply, whether it's your kids or it's your partner. You've got to learn to be present with yourself. And I think there's a lot of inner work to
Yes.
be done to make sure that you are that grounded, present masculine. And men's circles are a place where that inner work can start to happen, because sometimes doing that inner work by yourself, that's a lonely place. That's a hard place. They're hard questions to answer. They're uncomfortable. They're difficult. But to get into that place and to have support around us to do that inner work allows us to show up better with our relationships, with our partner, with our kids, with what matters most in our life. And that's the reflection I took from what you just said. So thank you for sharing that, Jason. That was powerful.
Yeah, it's spot on. And I'll just add about the group piece you named too, is a good group is going to help us see our shadows. So a
Mm.
lot of the work I do with men is shadow work in men's group, because obviously, if I'm standing here and you're like, do you see that shadow? And I'm like, what are you talking about? No, I'm good. I'm fine. It's not my fault. Right. But you're like, no, bro, like it's right there. What's hard for me to see is really easy for you to see. And that's one of the great gifts of group, is to help us see the parts of us that are unconscious. Right. I mean, I just had this experience with a guy a couple weeks ago, a big decision in his life. I think it was around work. And, we're just in group and we're sitting and, I ask him about, so yeah, what are you feeling about this choice? And what are you feeling about this choice? And he's like, yeah, I'm pretty split, you know? And then he goes on to talk about them. Turns out option A was, yeah, and then I would this, and then all that, and then yeah, I would probably do this, and it's pretty safe, it's pretty comfortable. Option B was, yeah, it's pretty exciting. Like I would have some opportunity, I would have a lot of choice. Like a part of me is a little bit scared. So much more energy in option B. His whole body completely different. He couldn't see it, but when 7 other men reflected to him, like, dude, you were completely lit up in the second one, and you were like stone cold dead in the first one. He was like, I had no idea my body was telling me that. But we saw it instantly, right? And we reflected to him, and it helps him make a much more informed choice. So, again, that's one of the great gifts of groups that can also be incredibly helpful for relationships, right? I'll just out myself. I've been to many groups coming in, all convinced that my wife was in the wrong and I was in the right, and I was going to get my guys and they were going to prove to me how I was in the right, and da da da. And I start to tell my story, and they start to give me some feedback. And by the end of the night, it's super clear. Oh, turns out I have just as much to do with this as she does. And instead of going home and attacking her, I get to go home and own my part, which actually creates connection. It's not falling on the sword of shame, so to speak, but many times I've had things illuminated for me that changed what would have been a fight into deep connection because other guys helped me see it.
Yeah, those stories we tell ourselves and what we think are the facts of what actually happened and what we ruminate on in our mind. It's good to have that other perspective sometimes to allow us to shift and go, actually, hang on a minute. Yeah, maybe I'm in the wrong, or maybe there's more to it than what that belief is. You've mentioned shadow work a couple of times, like shadow work's come up. So I'm just curious, like to touch on that a little bit. Like, what is shadow work?
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things that can mean a lot of things, but really what it is it's about bringing the parts of us that are unconscious into our conscious awareness. So we have choice. So all of us, no matter who we are, we have shadow from being children and early attachment wounding in our family systems, meaning there's certain adaptations we made to survive growing up that were smart and wise for the situations we were in. But then what our body doesn't know is, hey, dude, you're a grown ass man now. You don't need to be doing that anymore. But we don't realize it. And so we have all these unconscious beliefs and patterning that quite honestly govern our decision making without us being aware of it. So shadow work is starting to get into the process of what are these things that are controlling me that I'm not aware of, that sometimes come from within, and yeah, sometimes come from without. They're internalized pieces of culture or family or parents that we've made our own, right? For a lot of guys, um, one very simple piece of shadow work is, we talked about it a little bit, identifying our inner critic. They don't just come. It's not like, hey, you're just born as a baby being incredibly hard on yourself, talking to yourself in this way. Deep piece of shadow work for a lot of men is figuring out whose voice was that I internalized so deeply, I even forgot it's not mine. And talk about a matrix moment when men start to connect the dots of, lo and behold, not always, but often mom or dad. And it's like, whoa, I've been walking around yelling at myself like how dad used to yell at me when I was 8. Boom. Once we see it, we can't unsee it. That's kind of the beauty of shadow work, which then means, um, if you think of that kind of analogy of the fish in the water, fish is like, you're like, how's the water? And fish is like, what are you talking about? What's water? You finally pluck the fish out and they're like, oh my God, what? I've been in that? Now I can see it. What was the subject of my awareness is now the object of my awareness. It's something I can see rather than being merged with it. And why that's valuable, why that shadow work is valuable is once we can see it, guess what? We have more choice. We don't have to unconsciously follow these patterns. So a lot of guys that come to me, one of the reasons they come to me is there's this thing I do. Could be addictive, could be in relationship, could be with work. I know it's not good for me. I have evidence that when I do this, it's bad, but I keep doing it. I keep doing it. Why? Almost always there's some kind of shadow work there. And then last thing I'll just say about it is often it's also related to just overload, trauma, and overwhelm, meaning our system at some point was confronted with something that was too big for us to handle. And so how we deal with that is we lock it off. We just lock it off, right? Guys coming back from the military, uh, abuse survivors, like there's countless examples, and they're not all big. They can be small things. And so a lot of shadow work is bringing to completion unprocessed emotional content, like all that holding we were talking about of, oh, how do I actually get in there and figure out what that thing that happens in my belly actually is? And it's a thing, and it'll take you often back to some times and places that were intense. And then we guide you through how do you reintegrate that? How do you feel that? And lo and behold, it starts to liberate and not have so much control and holding on us anymore, which again just means we can do more of the things we want to do with more energy, and we have more agency in our own life the more we bring these things out of the shadow and into the light.
Inspiring and powerful. I think recognizing those shadows and being able to build an awareness around those shadows, see where that inner critic comes up, is something a lot more men need to work on. And it's something I definitely feel I need to work on. There are those moments there, and we don't stop to question it. So, Jason, it's been awesome to chat with you. And I think, I'm inspired to do more men's work and to connect with more men and to have these conversations because, what we've shared today has been so insightful. And I think a lot of my listeners would have got a lot out of that. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how men live today, what would that be?
Stop trying to do it all alone.
Mm.
I mean, it's just that simple. Um, we create these really elaborate stories that to be tough, I have to do it alone. And for a lot of guys, honestly, I'm so messed up in this way, I could never tell anyone that because I'm uniquely broken. And the truth is, you start sitting in a circle and it's humbling in a good way of, oh, turns out a lot of guys struggle with this. It's not that big a deal. I'm okay. I deserve connection and love and success and all those different things. So it's really just the willingness to open up and start to talk to other men. That's it. Just like, yeah, start to share your story. And um, what good masculine leadership is these days from men is don't wait, go first. You want to be a leader, that's what it means. Go first. Sitting with your buddy, you feel he's in tension, right? Oftentimes we know there's like yeah, he feels a little off today. Go first. Hey man, I've been really struggling with X. Da, 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 da. What about you? He might join you, he might not, but you'll never know till you take the risk. But if you do take the risk and he joins you, it could totally change that man's life.
I agree. Proactive steps, mate. Being more proactive, more on the front foot, taking charge, taking control. Such a powerful message. Jason, if people want to know more about your work and what you do, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can keep up with me on my programs, training, men's groups, my own podcast at evolutionary.men. So not .com, but .men. And on there, I've kind of got a whole gamut of ways guys can get involved in men's work.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I love your energy. I love the work that you're doing. I think we definitely need more of it in the world right now.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
If this conversation hit home, do one thing today. Reach out to a mate or join a men's group and get supported. You can learn more about Jason's work on his website or his social media channels. The links are in the show notes. If you want a place to start right now, join the free Midlife Mavericks School community. The link is also in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, leave a comment, add a rating, and share it with one man who needs to hear it. Thanks for listening to the Midlife Mavericks podcast. I'll see you next time.